Thank you, Brad, so much for being here. It is the end of 2025. We're in a new year. Tell me a little bit, if you had to describe Atlanta's office market right now in one word, what would it be?
In one word, I would say optimistic. As you know, since COVID, office was hit pretty hard.
Yep.
Now I would say, if you're looking at kind of a cycle, right? Like office was kind of down here back in 2020 and 2021, and we're starting to see that uptick. You know, people are getting back to work, spaces being leased.
Yeah.
So I would say optimistic. It's looking pretty good.
So speaking of leasing activity, in Q4 alone, we had roughly 70% of all leasing was renewals. Really, what is driving tenants to stay in place of where they are, and why aren't we seeing maybe more new tenants enter the market?
It's a good question. I would say that right now the office market has been very competitive. Landlords do not want to lose tenants, whether they're 3,000 feet or 20,000 feet. So I'd say they're incentivized to really keep their tenants in place. The cost of losing that tenant, releasing, building out, doing TI really helps kind of hold their feet to the fire. And the other part of that is like a lot of tenants don't really want to move. At the end of the day. So unless the landlord really puts them in that position, I think they're usually happy where they are.
Okay, and when tenants do decide to move, what do you think finally pushes them over the edge to move?
There's recently what we call flight to quality.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of tenants, maybe they were in 10,000 feet paying, a $25 per square foot rate, and now they only need 7,000 feet. So they can upgrade, at a new building that has better amenities. They're getting spec suite build outs. So there's a big emphasis on retaining and recruiting employees right now. Everyone's going back to the office. It's always great to have these nice amenities in these nicer buildings. So we are seeing a lot of that. I would say that's driving it.
Yeah. And I really liked what you said about optimism really coming back to the Atlanta office market, because we're really seeing that in vacancy. Over the past few years, vacancy has continued to trickle up, but we're actually seeing vacancy kind of hover around 25%. What do you think? Do you think all vacant space feels equal right now in Atlanta?
Yeah, you are correct. The vacancy from 5 years ago, it's slowly kind of ticked up. I think what makes the difference in that is second gen space versus a spec suite, for instance. So landlords are building out brand new office space, spending maybe $70, $80 a foot at times to build the space out to incentivize the tenant to move in and just take it as is.
Yeah.
That really cuts back on the time spent. You can spend 3 or 4 months negotiating a lease where you're going through the TI portion of that. And construction over the last few years has really increased significantly.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's hard to fit the TI budget in that, in your total build out cost.
Right.
And in this market, you really want the landlord to turnkey, all your improvements. So I would say that's probably what's going on there.
Yeah. And would you say that's probably, the biggest differentiator between a space that tours really well and a space that actually gets leased?
Yes. So like for me, when I'm out in the market with a client, I kind of know what buildings are building out spec suites, right? So if they're building out spec suites, that means the landlord has money and they're putting money and capital improvements into that building, whether it's through lobby renovations, new amenities for the tenants, tenant lounge, things like that. So second generation spaces that are older and tired, and when you walk in and it just doesn't feel modern, I guess.
Right.
That's probably the biggest difference I see, because when I take my clients out on a tour, I want them to see what's fresh, what's new,
Sure.
And what's the best space out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of jumping to asking rents in Atlanta, asking rents are actually holding pretty steady even amid all of these rise in vacancies. And then, we're kind of seeing this plateau around 25% right now. Are landlords defending rents more than they were, let's say, maybe a year ago?
Yeah, we are seeing that a little bit. Especially like starting last year, I would say, if the face rate is, say, $30 per square foot, the landlord will provide a little bit more free rent, a little bit more TI to help make the deal, but they do want to hold the face rate. We could get like a couple bucks per square foot off a few years ago, and now we're seeing it close to them, 50 cents to a dollar. So seems to be important for them to hold that rate in the market.
Well, Brad, thank you so much for being here. It's always super important to really talk about what's going on in the Atlanta market. So we're so glad you were able to sit with us as our office rep for the quarter. As we wrap up the year, what's really one thing you feel good about heading into the office market in Atlanta that you maybe didn't feel great about a year or two ago?
Yeah, I would say demand is up and leasing velocity is up. A lot of the tenants I talk to, they're back in the office, whether they're doing a hybrid model, whatever. So I'd say just having that demand, there may not be as larger deals going on, 20, 30,000 square feet as there used to be, but between 5 and 10,000 square feet, seeing a lot of leasing velocity, and that's a good sign for us in the market.